So it was the senior year of high school, and to my programming teacher, Mr. Fox, I was the student from hell. You see, every few minutes I would interrupt him and correct what he was saying. So he goes up to me and tells me, "Toli, if you have something to say, tell me after class." And that's kind of what I did. That day, I wrote a 5-page email detailing every mistake that Mr. Fox made, and I attached a lesson plan of how I would teach the lesson. Now, I read this email about a week ago, and I was really surprised at how inconsiderate and how rude I was to poor Mr. Fox. But back when I wrote that email, it didn't seem that I was doing anything wrong. But long story short, the principal calls in myself and my mom and tells me that I am being expelled for threatening a teacher. Well, a dean actually stepped in, and I got a psych evaluation, and turns out, nope, I was not out to get Mr. Fox, but I did have Aspergers. So I think when a lot of people think of Aspergers, they think of kind of this Sheldon Cooper type of character from the Big Bang Theory, you know, like super nerdy, super inconsiderate, like doesn't care about anyone's feelings. And I guess that's kind of how you could have described me in most of my life, and probably still now. But I guess one thing that normies don't quite understand about us Aspies is what goes on in our head. You see, we're not trying to be inconsiderate or rude. I kind of like to explain it this way. Let's say you're going down the I-95 and you're driving in a car, the speed limit is 50 miles an hour, everybody else is going 55, 60 miles an hour. So somebody's behind you, they're honking their horn, like, what the hell are you doing? Finally they pass you, give you the middle finger. The thing is, you haven't really done anything wrong. You hadn't broken the law. You're following the law to the letter, well, to the number. But there are all these unwritten rules of driving, which, you know, aren't really in the driver's manual. And in life, there are even more of these sort of gray areas, and that's what Aspies have trouble with, understanding those gray areas where there is no right and wrong. Another thing that Aspies have trouble with is emotion and empathy. You see, again, we're not trying to be assholes. It's just that we apply the golden rule, treat others like how you want to be treated. But because we're wired just a little bit differently, and because we're like super logical and super, step-by-step problem solving, a lot of times we have conversations with people and they want us, to console them, but we give them a answer. Because that's what we want. And then we come off as insensitive assholes. But one good thing about having Asperger's, a lot of people with Asperger's, they focus on one thing and become really, really good at it. And it could be art, it could be learning the ingredients of every cereal, it could be physics, and for me that was programming, specifically data visualization. And luckily for me, that meant that I would pretty much always be employable and pretty well paid. And that's kind of how I started my career, and it's kind of surprising what I got away with the first few years. In fact, it's kind of surprising that I actually got into the Federal Reserve of New York. Now, when most people think of like really conservative, you gotta like follow all these social norms, political institutions, the Fed is pretty up there. So it's kind of surprising that I even got in. But anyways, I got away with a lot of things, but whenever I made one of my social faux pas, a senior executive would always step in and say, it's Toli, don't worry about him, just ignore him. Until one day, the executive VP of the communications department was throwing a going away party, and everyone was there, including his mother-in-law. Now, she is this really old, proper English woman. But I'm being my usual Aspie self, just chatting with everyone, having a nice time. I actually had a really great time at that party. Then I come into work the next day, and everybody is staring at me. They're like, Toli, what the hell did you say to the EVP's mother-in-law? And to this day, I still don't know what it could have been that I offended her. That day, the VP of Communications calls me into her office and has a conversation with me that really changed a lot for me. She told me, Toli, when I hired you, I asked all around the data visualization community, and I got a pretty consistent story. They told me that Toli's a great programmer, he's good at what he does, but he comes with a slew of social issues. Now, I'm trying to rebrand the Federal Reserve, so I thought I could deal with those social issues. But I already stuck out my neck for you 4 times, and this is the 5th time. This is going to be the last time. You see, I have to fight my own political battles, and you have to fight your own political battles. And that kind of changed something for me because I suddenly realized something. I could probably go my entire life never having to confront my Aspergers. I would always be employable. I would always be well paid. Would always have some VP just sticking up for me. However, I would always be put in this category that I'm a resource, that I'm a liability even, that I'm in this box as that guy who's really good at programming and, well, that's about it. And I was determined to change that. Now, I didn't have that intuitive sense of social norms to begin with, but I did have the skill of creating patterns and seeing patterns in things. So that's how I approached Asperger's and conquering it. I made all of these little experiments and social rules. For example, whenever I was in a conversation with someone, I would pause every 20 or 30 seconds and see if they respond. If they added some new information, I'd probably get going. If not, they're probably not interested, so I stopped the conversation. An interesting thing started happening. After a few of these rules, I actually started gaining a lot of knowledge. I actually started accumulating this really interesting set of how to handle situations. And I actually started empathizing with people. I actually started feeling emotions when they had certain expressions on their face. It was interesting. So why am I telling you this story? Well, to all my Aspies out there, I strongly encourage you to learn empathy. I strongly encourage to use what you know, which is logic, step-by-step approaches, and experimentation, to make these rules for yourself. It takes a long time, but I promise it works. And at the very least, you'll become a slightly more fun person, bearable person, who am I kidding, to hang around. And to all my normies out there, don't give up on us Aspies. You see, we can learn emotion, we just kind of need a push in the right direction and a lot of patience, like a lot. Help us learn empathy. Thank you.